Hello and welcome to a video tutorial in which we will talk about block sections. This video is sponsored by Model Railroad Academy. Model Railroad Academy is an online resource where you can find helpful tips, inspiration and information about model railroad. It's also a community of knowledgeable, like-minded model enthusiasts where members can learn various techniques, helpful tips which they can apply on their own layouts. I have up till today made an excess of 50 video tutorials for Model Railroad Academy. And I'm in the process right now of making more premium videos to keep you inspired. As a member of Model Railroad Academy, you gain access to their huge library of step-by-step detailed instruction videos. Whether you're a beginner or a master modeler, their aim is to provide new method, tips and information independent on what level you're at. The first 1,000 viewers who click the link, I put up a link here in the upper right hand corner, gain a premium membership on Model Railroad Academy for only $1.49. So get over there and set up your premium membership. So what is block sections and why do we even need to care about this for our model railroad? We can just ignore it and put all the track pieces together and start building our layout anyway. But in the process of doing that, we will actually build in block sections without knowing it. And such layout where you haven't planned for the block sections typically is a layout which is less fun to operate and will offer you less options when it comes to traffic. However, a block section is in most cases designed long enough to hold one train. A block is also only place on the layout where trains should stop or at least are allowed to stop. Only one locomotive or train can be in one block at the same time. As mentioned, it's better to design the block using two sensors. Then first, in the beginning of the block, you have a sensor which tells the system that a train entered that block. And then in the end of the block, you have another sensor, a second sensor, which tells you that the train now is fully into the block. On a model railroad, there has to be one block more than there are trains. Because if all the blocks hold one train, then there is nowhere to go for any train. So there will be no train movement. If you choose to run automatic trains, which is definitely not a must just because you have blocks defined, is that the enter sensor can send a command to the locomotive to slow down in case the train is to stop in that block. So what happens then is that the train enters, it slows down, and when it reaches the in sensor in the end of the block, it will come to a full stop. That will typically also free up the previous block, so any train waiting to run into that block can start the journey to that block. Alright, so now we have outlined what a block section is. But when should we start to think about and plan for blocks in the planning process of our model railroad? Well, let's have a look at the planning process again. This 5-step process I typically use. And in the first step we select prototype if we want to have a prototype for our layout or if we want to freelance. In the second we do the line diagram. We just draw a line diagram so we know where the train line is going, terminating and so on. In the third one we select the layout style type and such things. But in the fourth there is the place to start thinking about block sections. Also in the fifth, when we start to put the actual track pieces together in our either a planning software or on the paper. So a lot can be said about the block sections and the planning of them, but it boils down to a trade-off of what train length you can run on your layout, what looks good and how big your room is. If you have only a small space for your layout, then your block sections will be also kind of short. One mistake I made on my previous layout to start with was that I divided the line in between stations and yard in too long and too few blocks. The idea was to save sensor inputs and reduce cabling, which is initially a good idea, but it turned out that that resulted only in that the trains were constantly standing and waiting for the next block to free up, since all the blocks were busy all the time. So that's a mistake I can tell you to avoid. Stick to your defined length of block sections when splitting the line into blocks.
Since we all have limited space for our model railroad, one idea is to define different block lengths for different lines. So let's say the main line has the maximum length. On this new layout I've selected 1800mm block length for the main line. So all the platform tracks, all the staging tracks, everything has to be at least 1800mm long to be sure to fit one full long train. The block length on my branch line will be shorter. I've selected 1200mm for that. It's also possible to define a third block length within, let's say, locomotive yards and places where you only typically run a locomotive, and then you can set the block length to like 300 or 400mm, so you just can fit one locomotive. On this new layout I've decided not to have a locomotive yard. Instead I have fueling tracks for the diesel engines, and those have the locomotive length of the blocks, so 400mm. Now, even if you made a definition of the maximum train length for each line, there is still possible to run overlong trains. The overlong passenger trains, they start from the track in the shadow station for overlong trains, run across the layout, pass all the stations, do not stop anywhere, and go back to the track for overlong trains. When it comes to freight trains, then it's possible to pull the entire overlong train onto the arrival track and then continue out on the drill track. So basically you can have a double length freight train running on the layout, but you have to split it when arriving to the yard.
All you guys who's experienced with full-scale railroading knows that block sections in real life also include definitions of travel between the blocks, so signals, turnouts, things like that. On the model railroad you typically don't do that. Turnouts and signals are never inside the blocks. Instead, they're a part of something called route definition. So you have a block from where the train will run to a destination block somewhere, and in between those there will be a route definition. So when running from block A to block B, turnout A have to be in switched mode, and the signal for that exiting the station has to be green, otherwise the route is not locked for the train. So that's a difference between, I would say, real-life definitions and model railroad. So in this video and for this layout I will use a software which is run on a PC or a Linux computer or wherever. It's compatible, I would say, with most platforms. The software is called Rockrail. It's free to use, free to download, but if you want to have more the fancy gadgets such as running trains with smartphones, etc., then you also need to support the project a bit, but it's really not costly. Now you may ask yourself, okay, this guy has the Central Station 3 and it can actually do this for you. You can define blocks and routes in that and have trains running more or less automatic in between those destinations. And yeah, I have been looking into that, and I would say that my previous layout had 283 routes between the 40 blocks or something I had, and to define all those routes manually in a graphic interface such as the CS3, even if you do it in the PC, it's not the way to go. So I would say, as a general advice, if you're building a smaller type layout, let's say 4-6 turnouts, or a carpet style layout, then the CS3 will definitely do the job for you. I will come back later with tutorials on how to set up the CS3 to make automatic traffic. But for a larger fixed installation like this, then I would typically not go for that solution. Instead, we're gonna work with this rock rail, and I will show you how it's set up in there.
And we're starting by making the sensors in our K tracks. So here's the enter sensor, and in the end of the track you have the in sensor. So these two we will cut now. So here's the area where I will cut the track or the rail. As you see here, this is pretty close to the next sectional track, which is turnout. I don't want to cut too close to that joint between tracks, so I'm moving 6 sleepers or ties into the next track, and there I start to make my cut. For this I'm using a motor grinder, then I'm drilling the hole for the cable pass through, vacuuming away any sawdust, adding this special flux for steel and stainless steel, soldering a bead there, and then attaching the cable. Now we also need to add some glue in the joints to prevent that this pretty short track piece moves and make short circuit with one or the other rail. I use only a moderate amount and apply it from the outside. After this, it's ready to make a test. I use this beeper test, so I'm attaching that and it seems to work. Yeah, and it's connection between the other two, so perfect. And here I have now soldered cables and made the same procedure to all the 8 tracks in the staging yard. So now we're ready to connect it in the other end. And that depends a bit on what system you're using. I'm using the Marklin system, so here is my S88 link module. It's a decoder, feedback decoder, and I'm just screwing the cable in, connecting it like this. One thing good to know is that this S88 link needs a power supply. Here we're jumping into Rockrail. This is the sensor 1. This is the first block, which I named SHBF01. And this is sensor 2, the in sensor. Let's now try out this sensor 1. And if we look into the central station display, we see that the sensor 1 is giving an indication, which means that the feedback loop works. So that's great. And once the train passes, well, then it goes out. So now all we need to do is to complete all the installations, and then we're ready to set up the software.
All right. So now I hope I've managed to explain the concept of block sections, why it's important to think about this ahead of planning a model railroad or during the planning, and also how in practice to implement it and do sensors and connect that to feedback decoders, and also how to set it up a bit in the software. There's a lot more to say about that part, but I will leave that for the manual there on Rockrail. So if you decide to go for Rockrail, check out the manual. It's great, and nowadays it's both in many languages, so it's really easy to understand. I hope you liked the content of this video. Thank you very much for watching. If you have use for the information provided here, please support the channel. Get over to Patreon, set up a support account there from $1, $2, $4, $20 per month, or make a one-off donation using the PayPal dialog found in the video description below. And if you're not yet a subscriber, subscribe. Enable that little bell and you will get a notification once next video gets published. Until that happens, see ya.